Have you ever felt a pull deep inside? A calling that leads you towards something greater than what the world expects from you? What if that call isn't like anything you've ever imagined, and its path is uncertain, yet brimming with potential? For many, there comes a moment when the desire for something more than the ordinary begins to surface. A yearning for a deeper purpose, one that transcends societal expectations and touches on something divine. This is the call to a higher purpose. A journey that invites you to embrace your true calling and step into a life of transformation, faith, and obedience. But how can you recognize this call, and what steps are required to answer it? In this video, we will explore the profound journey of those who answer God's call, diving into the process of embracing an often unconventional path, overcoming fear and doubt, and experiencing the transformative power of obedience. Through the stories of biblical figures and real-life experiences, we will uncover how God's calling can change lives, impact others, and bring fulfillment and spiritual growth. The call to something greater. A journey begins at some point in life. Many of us hear an inner voice calling us to something greater. This calling is unique and may feel overwhelming or unfamiliar. It doesn't always fit neatly into the traditional molds that society has established. Career success, family achievements, or societal status. Instead, it calls us to a deeper purpose, one that resonates with our soul's true desires and divine potential. Have you ever asked yourself, what if there's more to life than what I can see? What if I'm being called to a purpose that I haven't fully embraced yet? The call to something greater may not arrive with immediate clarity, but rather as an invitation to explore, grow, and transform. It pulls you out of your comfort zone and challenges the way you view the world around you. For some, this call may come quietly in moments of reflection, while for others, it may feel like a loud, undeniable force. But one thing is certain: when you hear the call, it is not just a fleeting thought. It's an invitation to embrace the divine purpose that God has destined for you. God's calling is not always easy to accept, especially when it challenges your understanding of what you thought was possible. It requires courage, faith, and the willingness to step out in trust, knowing that God has already prepared the way, even if you can't yet see it. This calling is one of transformation, not just in the grand sense, but in every aspect of your life. The unusual call, stepping into the unknown God's call, is often unconventional, taking people to places and purposes that go beyond traditional expectations. It doesn't always fit into societal norms or follow a predictable path. Just look at the story of the Apostle Paul, who was called by God, not in a place of peace and contentment, but during a time of radical transformation. Paul, once a fierce persecutor of Christians, was completely transformed into one of the most powerful evangelists in history. This radical shift shows that God's call often doesn't rely on our past, but on His ability to shape us for something greater. How many times have we doubted our potential, thinking that our past mistakes or shortcomings disqualify us from fulfilling a greater purpose? But God doesn't call us because we are perfect. He calls us because He sees the potential within us. Even when our past is filled with regrets, God sees the future He has prepared for us and invites us to trust Him with our transformation. This is a crucial part of answering God's call. The belief that He can work through us, despite our imperfections and past failures. Just as Paul was transformed, so too are we called to embrace God's work in our lives, trusting that He will use our struggles, pain, and past experiences for His glory. No matter how unusual or unconventional the call may seem, it is always designed for a higher purpose. Are you ready to accept that God can take the ordinary and make it extraordinary? God sees potential. Embracing your calling, it is easy to feel unworthy when answering God's call, especially when we look at our past mistakes and think, who am I to be called for something great? But God doesn't choose us because of our perfection. He calls us because of the potential He sees in us. He sees the gifts, talents, and strength that we cannot yet fully recognize in ourselves. is to embrace this potential and trust that God is the one who will equip us for the journey ahead. The chosen ones are not perfect, but they are willing to embrace the transformation that God offers. This transformation is part of the journey, where the pieces of who we once were begin to fall into place with the new identity God is creating in us. This requires a deep level of trust, as we let go of our fears and doubts and allow God to mold us into the person He knows we can become. Faith is the cornerstone of embracing this transformation. It requires belief in God's ability to shape our lives, even when the path seems unclear or daunting. By stepping into this trust, we open the door for God's miraculous power to work through us, enabling us to fulfill the greater purpose He has prepared for us. Faith and belief, trusting in God's plan. Faith is essential when answering God's call. Without belief in God's ability to act in our lives, we may hesitate or doubt whether we are truly capable of fulfilling the purpose He has set before us. But faith is not just about believing in God. It's about trusting that He has the power to transform us and use us to accomplish His will, even when we don't see the full picture. In difficult moments when the path seems uncertain, faith becomes our anchor. It helps us see beyond our immediate circumstances and trust in the bigger picture that God is unfolding. The story of Moses, who was hesitant to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, reminds us that even the most reluctant leaders can step into their calling with God's guidance. Like Moses, we may feel unqualified or ill-equipped for the task at hand. Yet God's promises to provide strength, wisdom, and courage are what make our calling possible. Do you trust that God can work in your life, even when things seem impossible? Do you believe that He will equip you with everything you need to fulfill your divine purpose? Faith opens the door for miracles to happen, allowing us to see beyond the challenges and trust that God is with us every step of the way. Transformation through challenges. The power of struggle. One of the most profound aspects of answering God's call is the way challenges transform us. Often, the moments of struggle and pain are the very tools God uses to shape our character. Like Paul, many of us have gone through difficult experiences that could have led us to despair. Yet God uses those challenges as a means of personal transformation. How do we reconcile the idea of struggle with God's calling? Struggles aren't signs of failure. They are the refining fires that help us grow stronger, more resilient, and more in tune with God's will. Every challenge we face is an opportunity for God to mold us into the individuals we were meant to become. Through trials, we develop patience, perseverance, and the wisdom to navigate the obstacles ahead. The process of transformation is ongoing. With each step of faith and obedience, we become more aligned with God's purpose, and our character becomes a reflection of His grace. Even in the hardest moments, we can trust that God is working behind the scenes, using our struggles for His glory. The unconventional nature of the call, spreading the message in unexpected places. God's call often takes us outside of traditional church settings or religious environments. While some are called to serve in churches, many are sent to places where the message of hope and salvation has not been heard. Workplaces, communities, social media, and even within family. The mission to spread God's love can happen in the most unexpected places, where we can impact lives in powerful ways. Have you ever considered that the place where you work, live, or socialize might be the very mission field God is calling you to? Many of us overlook the potential for ministry in everyday spaces. But these are the places where God's message can make the most profound impact. Just like Jesus ministered to the sick and the outcasts in everyday settings, we too can bring hope and transformation to the places where God has planted us. The unconventional nature of God's call is a reminder that His mission is not confined to buildings or traditions. It's about being His hands and feet in the world, sharing His love wherever we go. Even the smallest acts of kindness, faith, and obedience can ripple out and touch countless lives. Overcoming fear and doubt. Equipping for the journey. Fear and self-doubt are natural responses when stepping into God's calling. But God does not leave us unequipped. Like Moses, who feared his ability to lead the Israelites, we may feel ill-prepared or incapable. Yet God promises to provide everything we need to fulfill his mission. He equips the called, strengthening them with courage, wisdom, and guidance. Overcoming fear is not about eliminating it, but learning to trust God in the face of it. As we step out in obedience, God provides the confidence and resources necessary to fulfill our calling. His presence is our assurance that we can accomplish the task he has set before us, even when we feel unworthy or uncertain. Obedience to God's call. Unlocking blessings. Obedience to God's call is the key to unlocking the blessings and purpose that God has set before us. When we follow God's instructions, even when they don't make sense or seem difficult, we position ourselves to receive his blessings. Obedience may require us to step into the unknown, but it always leads to greater fulfillment and purpose. Have you ever experienced the blessing of obedience? Even when the path wasn't clear, God rewards those who trust him and follow his guidance. The true joy comes not from the accolades or recognition, but from knowing that we are fulfilling our divine purpose, aligning our actions with God's will. The true reward. Spiritual fulfillment over material success. When answering God's call, the true reward is not necessarily material success or public recognition. The satisfaction comes from fulfilling the divine purpose that God has placed in our hearts. The joy of knowing that our lives are making a difference in the kingdom of God far surpasses any temporary gain or recognition. God's reward is eternal. Every act of obedience, no matter how small, contributes to the greater spiritual harvest that God is working. The impact of our actions can extend far beyond what we see, touching lives in ways we may never fully understand. The reward is in the transformation of lives, the spreading of hope, and the advancement of God's kingdom. Impact beyond the immediate. Small acts with great impact. Even small acts of obedience can have a significant impact. The text reminds us that nothing done in love and faith is insignificant in God's eyes. Whether it's offering a word of encouragement, helping someone in need, or sharing the message of God's love, every act can lead to a greater spiritual harvest. The chosen ones may not always see the immediate results of their actions, but God's work in their lives ripples out to affect many others. Continuous growth and transformation. A journey of faith. The journey of answering God's call is ongoing. Each step of faith and obedience brings continuous growth and transformation. The process is not always easy, but it is through these challenges that we become more aligned with God's will. As we grow, we inspire others to follow their own calls, creating a community of believers who are empowered to make a difference in the world. Living with purpose. Trusting God's call. Living with purpose means trusting in God's call, even when it leads us into unfamiliar territory. Our lives have a divine purpose, and by following God's guidance, we can experience fulfillment and spiritual growth. The true meaning of life comes not from what we accomplish for ourselves, but from what we contribute to God's kingdom. Call to action. Join the journey of faith. The invitation to answer God's call is not just for individuals. It's a call to join a community of believers who are focused on growing in faith, supporting one another, and fulfilling God's calling together. By stepping into this journey, we can encourage each other and make a collective impact on the world. Conclusion. A life of purpose and transformation.